In this video, we will see how to configure Spring Security in a Spring Boot application. Open Spring Tool Suite. Go to File, New Project. Search for Spring. Click on Spring Starter Project. Give a name to it, let's say Spring Security. Choose Gradle as the build tool. You may also choose Maven if you like. Provide a group name, let's say com.springsecurity. Provide a package name, again let's use com.springsecurity. Modify the description. In the Dependencies section, search for Web, since we will be creating a web application. Click Finish. The project is ready. Alternatively, if you are not using Spring Tool Suite, open a browser. Go to spring.initializr.io. Select Spring Boot version. Select Build Tool, Gradle in this case. Provide group. Artifact. Provide a description. Package. Select Java version. We will be choosing 16, but you can select 11 or 8 as required. Next, add dependencies. Search for web. Click. And finally, generate. This will create a zip and download it on your system. You can go into your IDE and import this zip as a project. Back to Spring Tool Suite. Now, let's add a Spring controller to map URLs. This has nothing to do with Spring Security. It is required for creating a web application. Add a new class. Name it Home Controller. Add an @REST controller annotation to mark it as a Spring controller. Add a new mapping with @getMapping annotation. This corresponds to HTTP GET method. Create a new method that returns a string. Now, this method will respond to a GET request coming to the application with URL path as home. Go to the main class and run it as Java application. You can also run it as a Spring Boot application. Application successfully started at port 8080. Open a browser and access URL localhost:8080/home. We get the string returned by the controller method mapped to the URL home. Till now, we have a simple Spring Boot REST application. It has no element related to Spring Security. Now, let's look at the power of Spring Security with a minimal configuration. To enable Spring Security, we need to add its dependency in Gradle build file or pom.xml for Maven. Go to the browser and search for Spring Security Starter dependency. Look out for the link to Maven repository. Look for the Spring Boot version that we have used in our application. It's 2.5.4. Click this. Next, look for the dependency as per the build tool that you are using. We have used Gradle. This is the longer version with separate name, group, and version attributes. You can use this or the shorter version. Click this and copy. Back to the application. Go to build.gradle file. Under the dependencies section, paste the Spring Starter dependency that we just copied. Right-click the project. Look for Gradle option and refresh Gradle project. This will begin downloading the jars for the newly added Spring Security Starter dependency and add them to class path. Restart the application. Back to the browser and access the same URL as we did before. Look. It is asking for username and password. What we did was simply adding a dependency for Spring Security, and it automatically secured our application URL. As soon as Spring Security jars are added on the class path, all URLs require authentication with a username and password. Spring Security, by default, creates a user, with name as user and password is printed in the logs, here. This password is different every time the application is started. Copy this password. Username is user. Paste the password. Click Sign In. Look. We are able to access the requested URL. So, by adding this one-liner dependency, we have added Spring Security auto configuration and applied basic security to our application. Do not forget to like this video if it was useful.